You know, I remember I had a director on a project. As soon as he came on board, the first thing he did was, I want to fire these writers. And it's funny because we wrote the script that made him want to devote 2 years of his life to make a movie, and yet the first thing he wants to do is fire us.
How is the spec script market different today than it was in the 90s or early 2000s?
Well, that's part of that sort of progression I was laying out before. There used to be large development budgets at the studios. They used to be populated by people who wanted to put movies together and develop movies, so they would buy scripts by the dozens. Each studio would buy dozens of scripts, and then they would develop them. They would say, you know, this would be a great filmmaker. We should go after this person. And they would, one of them would percolate to the top. It would get its director, get its stars, and be ready to, and that's the one they would make. And the others that never made it might make it later or might just never make it, you know? And that was the nature of why there was that boom, because there was the money available to these studios, these development budgets, to take chances on things. And then as we progressed into the packaging realm, where the screenwriter suddenly had to become the studio executive and had to put together all the pieces and literally, you know, play the part of studio executive before they were even in a position to sell their script, that's when things started to become part of this realignment and the advent of streaming and how, you know, the spec sale became more difficult than ever. And now we're seeing a return, again, because of the technology, we're seeing a return to hopefully the idea of just the original screenplay selling without being encumbered by, you know, elements, actors, directors, because now the streamers armed with their algorithm, they want to put their own fingerprints on it with an exactitude that they know they can apply, almost like they think they're going to have a math problem here to solve. And that's fine with me because it means they're just now willing to buy scripts without having to do all that other legwork. So I think it's a good time to be a screenwriter right now. It's a good time for original ideas. I think the fact that we've seen the Marvel franchises start to sort of dwindle away, and people are getting sort of exhausted by the superhero worlds, if you will. It's opening a door, and as I always say, there's never, I don't think, ever going to be a time where people are not going to want to sit in a dark room and watch movies with other people. I think that will be something culturally that will always exist. And people are always going to want movies and TV shows. There's an appetite for it. We want to escape our lives. We want to be transported somewhere else. So I just think that there's constantly changes in the business models, but as I always say, a good script finds its way. If you can write an inspired, good script and never give up on it, I can almost guarantee you that it's going to find its way.
I believe you posted on your website and also maybe LinkedIn the anatomy of a script sale.
Yes.
And some of what you call the nitty-gritty behind it, and then some of the fallacies that, you know, so many of us think that we can do this and then we'll sell this amazing thing that we heard so much about in the 90s, early 2000s. Can we go through sort of a Reader's Digest version of the anatomy?
What that was referring to was sort of taking people through the headlines and sort of getting behind that into what actually transpires. I remember in some early successes that I had. I have a wonderful group of friends who cheer me on and are all completely oblivious to the way the business works, and all they can rely on is what I would tell them. And so they would have a lot of sort of misconstrued ideas of how it worked. They would think, oh, somebody hands you a briefcase full of cash and away you go to Margaritaville to party, your spec sale. But the truth is that you don't actually sell a script for a whole bunch of money and walk away. What's happening is you're being hired to do work on the script. So they buy the rights from you. They now own it. So say goodbye to your control of that forever. But they'll give you a 1, 2, or 3-step deal. And what that means is you're going to do a rewrite of this script because they have notes. Or they're going to bring a director on and he's going to have notes or she's going to have notes, and you're going to do a rewrite for them. Maybe you'll do a second rewrite, and maybe you'll do a polish. When you start the rewrite, you get a little piece of your money. And then 8 weeks later, when you turn it in, you get a little piece more of your money. And when you start the second rewrite, weeks or months later, then you get a little piece more of your money. And so it's paid out in these installments based on the work that you do over time. And so what's happened is that the buyers, the studios and streamers, they've tried to reduce the number of steps. It used to be, I remember sometimes there'd be 3 and 4 step deals. And you just have all this work that you're going to be doing and getting paid for over time. Sometimes it would take you a year or more to recoup all the money that you sold the script for. But nowadays what they try to do to save money and not pay writers as much as they just do a 1-step deal, so that they can reduce the amount of money that they have to pay the writer. And so then, once you've made the sale, you do one draft. It's also a way of them not being stuck with you, because a lot of times, I remember I had a director on a project. As soon as he came on board, the first thing he did was, I want to fire these writers. And it's funny because we wrote the script that made him want to devote 2 years of his life to make a movie, and yet the first thing he wants to do is fire us. Well, it was another time where I had to learn not to take things personally, because the reason for that is they want to make changes, and they feel as though you probably are very emotionally attached to what you've written, and you're going to resist that, or you're going to struggle to even see it and to be able to figure out how to do it. And so they figure the cleanest way is to just cleave you from the project, bring in another writer who sees it fresh, that they can work with, that has no emotional attachment to it. And so, they like having the flexibility of being able to move on from writers very quickly. So that's another reason for the 1-step deal. But that was I think the thrust of that blog post, was just talking about how a spec sale actually works and what are the elements behind it. There were some other aspects, but I can't recall what they were at this point.
If someone wants to write for Hollywood today, what do they need to know?
Well, I think it's important, again, I was alluding to this before, about having a sense of what the appetite, it's a business, right? You're trying to sell something. That's the weird, intersection of art and commerce here. You're trying to create a piece of art from your heart, but you're going to sell it. And so you have to be mindful of your audience, not just the people that might see it one day in the theater, but the buyers, the people that that think they know best about what audiences want, right? So it helps to basically know your world. And that's why I think that any writer starting out needs to read scripts and read the trades every day, so they get an education and so that they get an understanding. I also, it's a lot to ask, but I feel like it was really important for me. I went to LA and I worked for producers, and I lucked into those. I went to like temp agencies where you do a typing test and answer phones, and then they go put you on an agent's desk or producers. It just so happened the day I walked in, one of the biggest producers in Hollywood needed a coffee fetcher number 3. And I went in that night and I got coffee fetcher number 3. And I worked that up to traveling assistant and traveled the world with him and learned how movies get made. And that was an invaluable experience for me to learn how the business works, have an up-close view of it. And that was before I even started writing screenplays. I still hadn't made that leap yet. But I saw that it's kind of like seeing behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. You discover it's not this magical world. It's attainable. There are means of attaining it. There's shortcuts. There's people that have certain roles that you need to know. And it's by getting that education, even more than film school, that understanding of how the business works, that you can start to feel the confidence to take a chance on writing something and feeling as though you have a chance. Like, I had to develop that confidence. I couldn't have just sat in an apartment in Kansas City and thought, I'm going to write the great American screenplay and sell it. I had to go through that journey of being exposed to how the business works, being taught by mentors. I was a 22-year-old kid sitting in hotel rooms with Steve Zalian, the writer of Schindler's List and Moneyball, watching him solve a problem in a scene while the producer, gave him ideas. It was just an invaluable experience. And again, dumb luck that I was even in that position. But those are the kinds of building blocks to get yourself in a position to then and read all the scripts you can read and learn about what's going on in the business on a daily basis in the trades, see what's selling, see why, and then at some point you got to start writing, and you got to write every day, and you got to be a real writer. And that doesn't mean you can't have a job. I wrote my first spec script from 6 p.m. to midnight every night after working a full day's job, because that's what you have to do, And if you're smart, your full day's job will be in the business. So you're not wasting it, doing something unrelated to the movie business, and it's all synergistic, and you're just learning and grinding and learning. It takes time, and it's a process, but it can be done. I'm just some guy from Seattle, learned this craft, I call it. Yes, there's an art to it, but it's a craft that I have learned over time and been somewhat successful at figuring out how to sell my wares, if you will.
And lastly, if I may, it sounds like you also learned not to take things too personally. And
big
that
part
sounds
of
like
it.
a major thing.
I've been growing up in this business, and a big part for me growing up has been learning not to take things personally and to understand things from the other person's point of view, what they want, what their objective is. Try to see things from the other person's point of view so that you don't internalize everything as some condemnation of your art. And you understand that it's a business and that there is a way for art and business to both coexist. There's a lot of, growing up that's involved in it too. So it's just been a journey. That's why I keep calling it a journey, because it really has been a process for me.